Welcome to video 13. With our categories object in place and category navigation available in our template, the next step is to work on our products object. In the next 2 or 3 videos, I'm going to be demonstrating how to create these list of products and also how to organize them into categories when you click on a specific category in the navigation. We're going to be working primarily with m_products.php, and you'll notice a lot of this code that I'm going to be writing is similar to what we wrote a video or 2 ago with categories. So I'm going to start out with an opening PHP tag, and as usual a comment. And this class is going to handle all tasks related to products, displaying products, retrieving products from the database, that sort of thing. So like the categories object, the products object is also going to use access to the database. So I'm going to do something pretty similar to what I did for the categories. I'm going to add private database. I'm going to do private db_table. That's going to equal products. And I'll add my constructor. Which is going to access the global database object and set up this database. There we go. So, like I said in the categories video, this simply allows me to access that global database variable easier. Next up, let's talk about getters and setters. In this case, we're just going to be dealing with retrieving results from the database. So like the categories object, we also have a function called get, and this is going to handle retrieving information from the database. So this is going to be an ID, which is an int. That's optional, and it's going to return an array. This particular method's a little bit more complicated than the categories method for get, because we're actually going to add a third parameters, or a third option. You'll see what I mean in a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a temporary data variable, like so, and then we're going to check if isArray ID, else if ID does not equal null, and finally another else. So inside this, if we're checking if the ID is an array, we know that an array of IDs is being passed in. This isn't going to be useful right away, but it will be useful for when we use our shopping cart, because it gives us an easy way to ask to get all the information related to the specific items that are in our shopping cart. And below that, if ID is set, but it's not an array, we know we want to get one specific product. And otherwise, we know we want to get a list of all products. So for this particular video, we're going to be focusing on retrieving the information from one product. And to do that, we're going to start with a prepared statement. And we'll start with select. And it's going to be a little bit complicated, so let me explain this before I actually type it out. We want to retrieve all product information, any information related to that one specific product we want, so name, description, image, etc. And I also want to retrieve the category name that that product belongs to, in case we want to display that within our template. So because we're joining two tables together, we actually have to preface each of the columns with that table name. So the first thing we want to get is the ID. Then we want to get the name, then the description, then the price, the image, and then we want to get the category name. And because name is already being used, I'm going to define this as category name, just so it isn't confusing and I can request that information correctly. And then we're going to get all of this from this DB table, comma, categories. So that's the tables that we want to access. And we get them where this DB table.id equals question mark, and this DB table that category ID equals category.id. So if the statement works correctly, then we also need to do STMT. We need to bind the parameters in place. And we're dealing with an int for ID, so that's going to be an ID. And we want to execute. So that'll execute the prepared statement. And we want to store the result. So this will give us access to make sure that we actually have rows to display. And then we also want to bind the result, which means placing each of these specific items that we requested into a variable. So we're going to be getting product ID, product name, product description, product price, product image, and finally cat name. Once all of those are in place, then we do STMT fetch to actually retrieve that information, and we check if there are rows to display. So if STMT numRows is larger than 0, then we want to actually use these variables that were created and add them to our data array. So data equals array. So ID is prod ID. Name is prod name. Basically, this is just the same thing all for the rest of the various variables. like that. And then after the if statement, we want to add stmt close. That'll close off our prepared statement. And all the way at the end of this method, we want to return data. So let's actually see this in action as the last item in this video. So let's go to our init.php. Let's do a similar thing. We want to include the products object. We want to create the products object. And then within our index.php, let's comment out what we currently have. Echo pre. Print our products get, and we're going to try to get the product with an ID of 1. Echo the closing pre. And we'll exit. So let me check on this. Looks like I missed adding a closing quote here. So we have an opening quote and we need to close that off as well. And while I'm at it, I noticed that this category.id is incorrect. It should be categories.id. So let's save that, refresh the page, and there we go. We have an array. It contains all of our product information and also the name of the category that that product's in.